It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You go to emailrevealer.com, you get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. We can also catch your husband or your boyfriend cheating online. You give us their email address, we'll trace it back to online dating websites. That's emailrevealer.com. Also, to remember, OppermanReport.com. We have a special members section there. You can sign up, become a member. It helps support the show that you hear on Friday night and the show you hear on Saturday night. But there's also exclusive content. We have shows that we record during the week that only play in the members section to members. Also, we have a document section in there with all kinds of wonderful stuff. We just had Montgomery Blair Sibley, and he gave us a whole cell phone list of D.C. Madam. So a lot of great stuff in there, and we're updating it constantly. Now, we've got a really big, important show for you today. We have Kathleen Willey. Now, you probably remember that name back in the 90s. This is a woman whose life was turned upside down because of the Clintons and the abuse that she went through with some of the most powerful people on the face of the earth. And this woman's come back out of seclusion to stand up for herself and to tell us what went on. So, Kathleen Willey, are you there?
I'm here. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on it.
Thank you so much, and sorry about the confusion with the time zones. We once again.
That's okay. I'm glad I was here when you called. I thought maybe you forgot or whatever, but no problem. I'm here.
Great, thank you very much. So, Kathleen Willey, tell us about yourself. Who is Kathleen Willey?
Well, Kathleen Willey is just a regular American woman. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I got married rather young, at 23, and I had 2 children. I was a stay-at-home mom. I loved every minute of it. And as my children got older, I got involved in politics on a voluntary basis. My late husband's father had been the president pro tem of the Virginia Senate for 35 years, so we always had an interest in politics our whole lives together. And so I just started on the local level, and then I went to the state level, and I volunteered on Mary C. Terry's campaign, who was the first woman to run for and be elected as Attorney General for the state of Virginia. And then I worked on Doug Wilder's campaign when he ran as for Lieutenant Governor of the state of Virginia, and he won that. And then I worked on his gubernatorial campaign, and he was elected then, and he became the first black governor in the country. And then it was through that campaign we had a fundraiser for Doug Wilder at the Kluge Estate in Charlottesville, and which is now owned by Donald Trump, ironically. But and that's where my husband and I met Bill Clinton and other governors who just happened to be in Charlottesville for a Southern Governors Association meeting. So it was all very coincidental. So they were invited over, and that's when we met Bill Clinton. And we just spent the evening talking with him a lot, and he was talking about Arkansas and what he was doing. And at that point, he had not announced for president, but there was a lot of talk about it. And anyway, when he announced, we immediately jumped on board. We liked him a lot, and we liked his ideas, and we liked the fact that he was young. And we started Virginians for Clinton, and we gave his campaign office space. And my husband was an attorney, and he had a suite of offices, so we gave him an office. And we raised a lot of money for him, And then after he won, we went to other in other cities, and we were very, very involved. And then after he won, I volunteered on the inaugural campaign, and so I was going to Washington. I was commuting to Washington every day for weeks for the inaugural, and then about 2 or 3 months after he was sworn in, they put out a call. They called our state party to see if there was anybody who would be interested in volunteering at the White House. They just really needed a lot of help, and I thought, well, this is a good time. I was an empty nester. My children were off in college, and so I thought, sure. And
well, let me ask you this before we get to the White House. Yeah. When you were volunteering for all these various campaigns, what kind of work would you do every day as a volunteer?
Oh, you name it. And that was back in the old days before social media. And I mean, I remember a young kid saying to me one day, saying, "How did you ever run a campaign, without a fax machine?"
That's right.
He couldn't imagine it. And I just said, "Oh, it's a long story." I mean, it was a whole different ballgame back then. But I mean, I just did everything. I answered phones, helped coordinate volunteers. I mostly worked in fundraising. I got to be pretty good in that part of these campaigns, and so I raised a lot of money for on the local and state level.
Well, give me an idea. How much money would you raise?
Oh, geez, I think at the time we, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
Over the years.
And how would you do that?
I can't. It's been so long. I really can't give you a number. I do know that that there was a very big fundraiser for Bill Clinton at the home of Mrs. Harriman in Middleburg, and my husband and I singularly raised the most money for that event. And at that point in time, that event alone had raised more money for any political nominee or anybody running for politics in the history of the country. That's when donations really started to get bigger and bigger, and so at that point that kind of broke a record. And so, like I said, we raised a lot of money, and we became friends with him. We went to Little Rock election night, and we were very, very involved.
Now, I'm not clear about, you said you donated an office space to him. Where was that? In what city was that office space?
Richmond, Virginia.
Richmond, Virginia.
My husband had his law office here, and he had 3 or 4 offices, and we had one office that was empty, and so we gave that to the Clinton campaign.
And what did they do with it?
Virginia for Clinton worked out of that office.
What did they do with it?
Phoning, a lot of phone work, and they had use of our secretary volunteered and helped them, when she could, and I did, and making phone calls and arranging fundraisers and those kinds of things, sending out mailings, all of those kinds of things.
And would Bill and Hillary show up at that office?
No. We were not. It's funny. I never thought I'd see the day that, and it has happened, that Virginia would become a swing state. Because back then we just weren't all that important. The Democratic Party of Virginia was nothing like the National Democratic Party. It's what they called back in that old day Dixiecrat.
Right.
And that's what my father-in-law was. And it just was very different. It was a conservative Democratic Party, a moderate, let's say that. But
so now, if you were raising all this money, right? Now, the people you were raising money from, would they then come to you later on for favors and say, "Hey, we need to contact the candidate and have a meeting with him. We need a favor here. We need this, that."
Well, yeah, I mean, that would happen occasionally. I mean, when they realized that we were working for different campaigns, and they, especially when other people wanted to run for a local, local office or state office, they were looking for endorsements, or they were looking for people to come to make appearances, and those kinds of things. Yeah, we would get requests for that, and those were reasonable requests.
Okay.
I had no problem with that. I mean, that's how policies work.
Right. So I guess we're to the part now where you went to volunteer at the White House, or the inauguration.
That was in March of '93, and I started out in the correspondence office. They were the rock stars, and they were overwhelmed in that office, and they were overwhelmed with mail, and they wanted to respond to everyone. So I started out there, and then I moved from there to the East Wing, and I worked in the social office, which is usually, in past history, has always been the First Lady's office. She's always been there in the East Wing. But Hillary, wanting to be the co-president, insisted on having her office in the West Wing. So we rarely, and I mean it was rare, that she came over to the East Wing. The social secretary always went to her office. I think maybe we saw her twice the whole time I was there. Anything that had to do with state dinners and receptions and Christmas, their first Christmas at the White House. I mean, there were events and receptions every single night in December, and we were very busy. But
so let me get this straight.
I will have to say that Hillary was not interested in that side of being First Lady.
But
she was not interested in place settings and flower arrangements and all those kinds of things. She had no interest in that whatsoever.
So at this period of your life, around '93, every day you would get up. Every day you'd get up and go to the White House.
I went 3 days a week.
3 days a week?
3 days a week. I got up every morning, got on the train, and commuted. Then went and got on the train, and then rode the train home that night. And
so that must have been pretty exciting, right?
It was exciting.
I can imagine.
It was very exciting. I mean, it was very exciting. And I just remember I got the bug when JFK ran, and I guess mainly because I'm Catholic, and I was going to a Catholic school, and the nuns were all Twitter about everything, and I can remember the nuns straying in the black and white TV on election day, and then on inauguration day, and so that's when I really got the bug for politics. And so going, I just remember the first week just walking around thinking to myself, geez, I'm walking on the same floor that JFK, walked on, and all these other presidents, and it was just to me, it was very overwhelming.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And the Rose Garden, and the East Room, and the dining room, the West Wing dining room, and the Oval, all of it. It was just, it was surreal.
Oh wait, now you would go into the Oval Office.
Well, there were days when he wasn't there.
Right.
And if you were, if you asked, you could go in and walk around and look around. And then,
is everything smaller? Is everything smaller than you?
We were friends, and then,
right.
and I just happened to see him one day. And,
okay.
And he said, "Would you like a tour of the Oval Office?" I said, "Well, sure." And so he walked me around the entire Oval Office, and I realized later back back behind the Oval Office there's a little kitchen, and there's a private dining room, and then there's that famous private study where he and Monica and God knows who else got together. But I mean, I got the whole tour.
Now, is it smaller than you would imagine, or is it bigger? What is it?
It's much smaller than I imagined.
Yeah, I figured too. Yeah.
People fought for real estate in the actual White House. Most offices are next door in the old executive office building, which is huge. But the actual, I was very surprised. The White House itself is smaller than one would think. I mean, the East Room, where they have, they bring in. I mean, I was so surprised because I would help plan state dinners once I got there, and I was so surprised that, I mean, if you really cram tables into the dining room or the East Room, you would be lucky to get 125 people in there.
Really?
So you really had to do some maneuvering to get that many people in there. Where when you see pictures of these state dinners, and you think that there must be at least 500 people in there.
Right.
Having at a dinner. I mean, that's just the illusion of it. So all of that, it was just it was a surprise, and I remember. I mean, of course, the landscaping was just perfect all the time, and gardeners were everywhere, and the rose garden was breathtaking. The whole place, the blue room, the red room, all of it. I mean, the history of all of these rooms was just overwhelming. Downstairs in the basement, as they call it, it had kind of an arch ceiling. And down there was, they call it the First Lady's room, and it contained many of the official portraits of the First Ladies and their own china settings that they had for their administrations, and lots and lots of history. The diplomatic room that you come in off of the South Lawn, that you see that there's all. The walls are all painted murals. I mean, it was a beautiful place. It is a beautiful place.
Now, what about the security, the Secret Service security? Did you find it was like really as intense as people think it is, or did you say, "Oh my God, anybody could just walk through here and do whatever they want"?
Not in the White House. Not in the White House. I mean, everything was a lot looser. I mean, there were. Capitol Police had roles in the White House, as well as the Secret Service in the White House. But things were just a lot looser because, we all had security clearances. We weren't dealing with terrorism at that point.
Right.
I do remember I think it happened 3 times. They put us on lockdown when they would find an unaccounted for car in the parking lot. Right there between the West Wing and the old executive office building, and they'd lock us in, and that was kind of scary because you really couldn't get a whole lot of information. But I found the Capitol Police and the Secret Service to be very normal, down to earth people that took their job seriously, but who you could talk to every day, have regular conversations with every day, just stop and chat with them, how are you, how are things going, kind of thing. So inside the White House, that was, you didn't have to worry about that. Outside is a whole different story.
Now, what about Chelsea Clinton? Would you see Chelsea running around and playing?
I saw Chelsea quite often.
Yeah.
She was... she was kind of off limits to everybody, and I certainly understood that. But I did see her quite often, going and coming, from school, and when she would go to see her dad. And I saw her going to see her dad a whole lot more than I saw her going to see her mom. But maybe I just missed that. But I saw her. She was a nice, quiet little girl, polite, very polite, and but we all pretty much gave her a wide berth. She was, if you can imagine, being the first child.
Did she have little friends playing with her? Could she have friends over for after-school play?
Yeah, I mean, she'd have overnight and slumber parties and birthday parties, and she'd have friends over to watch a movie in the White House Theater, and they tried to give her as normal a life as they could, and I would say up until that point, as she was growing up, they seemed to have done a very good job of raising her. I don't know that I can say that now, but but at the time, she just seemed like a normal. I guess she was 12 when she got there, so we watched her for 8 years. Well, I wasn't. I left in '95, and but anyway, it was just a special time for me. I just remember I made a point every day when I left, to go to Union Station to look back over my shoulder to remind myself it was all real.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yeah, I could imagine. Now, you had volunteered for the Clintons, and then you were there. You're in the White House 3 days a week. Were there any? Did you see any signs of rampant infidelity from Bill, or their personal life? Hillary too.
No.
No. Were there rumors?
Oh yeah, there's always rumors.
What kind of rumors?
And I worked when I after I was a volunteer in the social office, and then when later on, after we'll go through that story, I had a paid job, and I was then working in the West Wing in the White House counsel's office, where Vince Foster worked, and I just happened the things that struck me, which surprised me, was that administration was very loosey goosey. I would walk in at my office in the morning, and one day all of the legal documents of Paul Jones's lawsuit were just sitting on my desk there.
Really?
And then I walked in another morning, and the entire FBI background check of somebody who was being considered for the Supreme Court was just sitting on my desk. And, those are the kind of things that shouldn't be sitting on anybody's desk. And I just, I found it to be, I was surprised at the informality of that administration. I would see days where Clinton and his gang would be in the White House and running shorts in the Oval Office or jeans, and their feet up on the tables and the desk, and pizza boxes open all around, and I just that struck me as rather inappropriate. But who was I to complain? But I remembered thinking at the time that other presidents, Ronald Reagan and Bush and all, demanded that anybody who walked in there would have a coat and tie on, or a woman would be dressed appropriately, and they held the office in high regard. We found out later Bill Clinton didn't.
Now, what about any rumors of? There's a lot of rumors these days of Hillary being a heavy drinker, and of Bill using cocaine and using drugs and stuff like that. At the time, were there any rumors like that?
Yeah, I heard them.
Just
and there were also rumors about her temper, and I personally would see him on days when he'd show up, with a Band-Aid on his forehead, a cut on his face, or it was always he ran into a door, or he fell down jogging or something. But you would hear, being that close in that close proximity to people around there, you'd hear the rumors that there'd been lamps flying the night before. And, I had heard that Hillary is a thrower, and I saw evidence that Hillary is a thrower. Anything she could get her hand on, she would throw at him.
What kind of evidence did you see?
Well, I would see him, like I said, with a bandage on his forehead.
So I guess he was the catcher, right?
Huh?
He was the catcher. If she was the thrower, he was
the catcher. She was the thrower.
Catcher with his face. Now,
right, exactly. Or he didn't duck fast enough.
Right. Now, what about you mentioned?
After he got shot, but yeah, and I think, and I have heard, just from people I still know, who are still in those circles, that has not changed. She's still throwing things.
Right. Now,
and
what?
He's given her every reason to throw things.
What about?
It's beyond me.
Yeah. What about Vince Foster? Now, you mentioned you were there at the time. Vince Foster.
I was still in the East Wing when Vince died.
Right.
But I was literally moving into that counsel's office. But I was very aware of everything that went on that night because one of the volunteers that I worked with, who I became very close with, her father, Nate Landau, was a big money guy. He was Al Gore's financial chair when he ran. He was chairman of the Democratic Party of Maryland. He had a huge estate up on the eastern shore of Maryland, and Vince Foster and I wish I couldn't. It'll come to me, but about 3 other couples were invited up to the Landau estate on the Maryland eastern shore the weekend before Vince killed himself, and I believe Vince killed himself on a Monday, and I had already left because I worked Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Sometimes, if they need me, there were some days that I went up, every day. But, the minute I got home, I got a call that had happened. I had not really been introduced to Vince, but I had certainly seen him around the White House, and and of course I saw when I went the next day. I was at the White House. My friend Carolyn, who like I said was the daughter of Nate Landau, was just beside herself because they had just spent the weekend with him, and we were talking about how he was, and did he look like he was getting ready to commit suicide the following Monday, or did everybody was looking for signs, or did anybody miss something? And unfortunately, I went through the same thing months later with my own husband. But
Right.
She said the only thing that seemed odd, which isn't really odd when you think about it, is that he spent a great deal of time on his back. He's a very tall man, but he spent a great deal of time on his back on a float in the pool, just looking up at the sky. And I don't think anybody really thought that was an odd thing to do, but Carolyn said that she just kind of noticed that he was doing that a lot the entire weekend. So, that's all I know. But she was
what about
extremely upset. It was just like a fun couples weekend up there. They all had a good time.
Now, what about after the death? Were you a witness or anything about all the cover-up, and they went into a safe and all kinds of stuff and moved boxes out of his office?
Well, I didn't witness it because I had already left, but I was told about it because I knew Linda Tripp. We had become friends, and Linda worked in the counsel's office. And Linda was a holdover from the Bush campaign. And she was very loyal to the Bushes still.
Right.
And did not like the Clintons and didn't make a whole lot of bones about it, but she liked her job. So they kept her as a holdover, and she was kind of a floater for a while. And she finally wound up in counsel's office. And so she was there, and she started seeing everybody, Hillary was out of the city at that point. I think she was, I want to say Florida, but then somebody else said maybe California, but all I know is that as Linda reported, that there was all kinds of phone calls going on back and forth, Sid Blumenthal being one of them, and lots of different people going in and rifling through Vince's desk and starting to, just take everything out of it, files, you name it. And Linda, having been there and knowing how things should work, had the sense of mind to call the Capitol Police and say, come up here and seal this office. There are too many people roaming through this office. This could be a crime scene, and which they did. But, they managed to get pretty much emptied out death before that happened.
Interesting. I never knew that Linda Tripp was the one who contacted Capitol Police and told them to seal the office. That's very interesting. Yeah,
she did. It was very smart of them.
Well, we're about 2 minutes toward a break. What is your conclusion about Vince Fossey? Do you think it was a suicide, and you think it was covered up? What do you think?
That's a hard one. Because then I get into that. I try to stay away from that conspiracy theory, whack job label, but because I've been called that before. But I do have my doubts.
Right, suspicious.
And I do have my doubts, and I have talked to one extremely credible person who did see photographs and did see 2 gunshot wounds.
Okay. All right.
And I do, and I mean extremely credible. This person has no reason to lie.
And is this a name that we would know if you mentioned the name?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm not going to do that.
You're not going to mention the name. You're not going to do that for me, huh? Okay.
No, you do it.
Okay, you've done enough so far. Okay.
You might be able to, if you started digging enough, you're in that business.
Yeah.
You might be able to figure it out, but that's one I'm not going to divulge.
Okay. Okay. Well, would you confirm it for me off the air, off the record, if I found out who it was? We'll talk off the air.
You're going to have to let me think on that one.
Okay. We are with Kathleen Willey. Her website is A Scandal a Day. That's all one word, but if you go on Facebook, too, it's A Scandal a Day. She has a Facebook page as well. Also, too, she has a book that she's written about a great deal of this topic. Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton. We'll be right back after these messages with more of Kathleen Willey. This is your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. And if you're enjoying this show right now, there's more. You can get more. You can go to the Ed Opperman YouTube channel, and you can subscribe there. And we have archives of all of our past shows for over the past 3 years, about 200, 300 shows. You can also go to the Opperman Report Spreaker channel, and you can follow us there. Again, a ton of shows, about 300 shows on there. And whenever we do an impromptu show, an emergency-type broadcast that we do during the week occasionally, you'll get an email notifying you of breaking news and spontaneous broadcasts that we may do during the week. You can also go to OppermanReport.com and become a member. If you become a member, you help support the free archives on Spreaker and YouTube, and you help support the free shows on Friday evening and on Saturday evening. Each of these shows, Friday evening and Saturday evening, are carried for free on 7 internet stations, okay? So you help support that, but also, too, at OppermanReport.com in the members section, we have exclusive content. Shows that are recorded during the week that are only available to members. So please check out OppermanReport.com and help support the show.
The son of a Polish immigrant who grew up in a Brooklyn tenement, Bernie Sanders. He went to public schools, then college, where the work of his life began, fighting injustice and inequality, speaking truth to power. Bernie moved to Vermont, won election and praise as one of America's best mayors. In Congress, Bernie stood up for working families and for principle, opposing the Iraq War, supporting veterans. Now he's taking on Wall Street and a corrupt political system that holds up a rigged economy. Bernie's campaign is funded by over 1 million small contributions from people like you. He's fighting for living wages, equal pay, and tuition-free public colleges. Bernie Sanders.
People are sick and tired of establishment politics, and they want real change.
Bernie Sanders, husband, father, grandfather, an honest leader, building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
Check out strawmanmusic.com. Sean Duff is our webmaster here at the Opperman Report, and he's a very talented musician. He's part of a band called Strawman. They're based up there in Canada. Don't hold that against them. These are like-minded folks. If you like the shows you hear on the Opperman Report, you'll like the music that they have over at strawmanmusic.com.
Enough is enough. Wall Street's greed and illegal behavior drove this country into the worst economic downturn since the 1930s. And then, after getting a huge taxpayer bailout because they were too big to fail, it turns out that 3 out of the 4 largest banks are bigger today than they were before we bailed them out. That's crazy. I'm Bernie Sanders. My plan: break up the big banks who are strangling our economy and make them pay their fair share of taxes. Then we can invest in the middle class, expand Social Security, and provide universal college education. I'll rein in Wall Street behavior so they can't crash our economy again. Will they like me? No. Will they begin to play by the rules if I'm president? You better believe it. I'm Bernie Sanders, Democratic candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
You know, you can get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, if you go to my website, emailrevealer.com. Now, this is a limited edition book, okay? And you can get a signed copy of this book, and it'll be personally autographed to you or whoever you want to give the book to as a gift. Once you have my signature on that book, you can copy the signature and put it on checks and pass them all over the world. Emailrevealer.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator.
He's fought injustice and inequality his whole life. Bernie Sanders. As a college student, he was arrested for challenging segregated housing. Bernie marched with Dr. King and thousands of others for civil rights. In Congress, Bernie stood up for working families on health care and jobs. Now he's taking on Wall Street banks and a corrupt political system that keeps in place a rigged economy. Bernie Sanders, a reformer who believes in ending racial profiling and mass incarceration so the justice system works for everyone. Bernie Sanders.
There is no president who will fight harder to end institutional racism and reform our broken criminal justice system.
Bernie Sanders, an honest leader building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with our special guest, Kathleen Willey, who is the author of Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton. And also her website is ascandaladay.com. And you can also find her on Facebook, too, A Scandal a Day. You know, before we resume, I really want to thank you for coming on the show and coming back into the public eye and doing a public service in educating the country. A lot of people are too young to even know these stories, and I really want to thank.
That's one of my missions, because I'm basically trying to reach out to the millennials who were either too young or weren't even born yet when all of this was going on, or because of the salacious material of everything that was on the nightly news during all of that. Their parents were monitoring their television watching.
Right.
And so a lot of them, to this day, I get messages and comments and private messages from young women and men who say, "Oh, well, I didn't know about the story," or "I've heard a little bit about the story," and tell me more. And so they're mainly my target. I am well aware of the fact that there are certain people that are not going to listen and will never change their mind, and you cannot reason with them. I don't care what you tell them, what you show them. If you try to sit down and be reasonable with them, they're just not going to change their mind. And so I just let that part of it go because it's too frustrating. It's just too aggravating. They are who they are.
Well, also, the media tries to portray this as, well, infidelity. These are indiscretions of Bill Clinton. And they always mention Monica Lewinsky. They don't mention the women who were abused and attacked, and then the hell you were put through afterwards.
Well, let me tell you, I know and have met Juanita and have spent time with Juanita. And Juanita, we sat down the first night that we were together, and she told me the whole story of what he did to her. And it's even more horrific than what she's already told.
Really?
And I can tell you that this woman is not lying. I can tell you that it was traumatic in the telling of it 30 years later, which I guess maybe it was even more than that she first told me about it, but at least 5 years ago. It was as traumatic in the telling it 30 years later as I'm sure it was the day it happened for her. If anybody ever watched the interview of her by Lisa Myers, you can see and feel and watch, and hear the trauma that she went, that she was put through. And to this day, I have to say, I was extremely shocked when because I'm on Twitter, not very much, but I'm on Twitter, and the day that Hillary made that statement about if you've been raped or sexually assaulted, you have the right to be believed and listened to, and we are with you. I just remember sitting here and watching that, and I thought, wait a minute. And I literally had to rewind it about 5 times to make sure that I wasn't dreaming or seeing something wrong. And I just thought to myself, who in the name of God is handling this woman? I mean, it told me more about the soullessness of this woman than anything else I think that I've ever seen, besides the fact of what she, the campaigns that she that raged against us. And when she did that, I just thought to myself, and then the next day, Juanita was so outraged. She sat down and she wrote a tweet, and she said, I was raped by Bill Clinton in 1976 when I was 35, something like when I was 35 years old, when I was 27, I don't remember the age, okay? But when I was such and such years old, today, 35 years later, it never changes. And I just thought, wow, I never ever thought that I would see that day, because after what happened with her, after it took her a month to decide whether or not to do the Lisa Myers interview with NBC, and then they held it until after impeachment. They would not run it while the impeachment was going on, before the vote, which would have changed everything. But you know how mainstream media is. And I think her biggest worry was people weren't going to believe her, or that she was going to be attacked. And I just, I talked to her many, many times that month. At that point, I had yet to meet her, but I talked to her many times that month. And I just said, nobody can make you do what you don't want to do. But if you think it's the right thing, and if you think you're going to have an impact on this impeachment, and if they're going to do, NBC says they're going to do what they say they're going to do, go for it. You could change history. And she eventually did, and they held the interview, and Lisa Myers eventually lost her job. And so after that, Juanita just said, never again. So when I saw that, because we talked over the years, we stayed in touch, and I called her immediately. I said, what in the world? And she said, Kathleen, I was so outraged when I saw that tweet, and then I saw a clip of her saying that, and I was so beside myself. She said, you know what? I can't stay quiet anymore. I've got to get back out there again. And she's back out there again, and she's been on radio and TV, and
yeah, we
will continue to do that.
Yeah, Juanita Broderick was just on the Opperman Report 2 weeks ago, live on a Saturday. But unfortunately, I had a guest host that week. I didn't get a chance to interview her myself. But I'm hoping to have her back, where I can interview her myself, because I just have so many questions about all of this.
She's very willing. She's very, very willing.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get her back, because I'm sure she enjoyed the show. Everybody said they really liked the show, her appearance. Now, let me ask you a question, too, because you mentioned all these names, Linda Tripp, and what about Monica Lewinsky? Did you meet her? Did you know her at the time?
No.
Never knew her?
She came right after I left.
Gotcha. Okay, so then why don't we...
I was in touch with Linda a little bit after I left. See, when Linda left, she was let go. And it was at that point that I was given a part-time, I needed a job at that point. And I was brought on part-time, and Linda was let go. But it wasn't because they brought me in. It was because they brought in a new counsel. The original counsel had to leave under scandal. Big surprise there. But he had to leave, and they brought in a new counsel, and he wanted to bring his staff with him. And so they let Linda go. And so she was furious, and she viewed it as my taking her job, which is ridiculous because, I mean, I made hardly anything, and she had been a civil servant for many years and had a very good salary. So she was making 3 times as much as I was making. So it wasn't that, but she perceived it as that, and she was very angry. And and we did not part friends. And I only talked to her one time after that when the press started snooping around because I had told Linda. I had seen, she was the first person I saw after what happened to me in the Oval Office. And when I told her, when I saw her, I told her. And later on, we came to realize when Paula Jones filed her lawsuit and they started looking for women, and then I got subpoenaed, we finally figured out that Linda was working for Paula's attorneys and giving them a lot of information. And then in turn, she was taping everything with Monica. And she was doing all of that with Monica.
Well, what do you think her motives?
I have to say this.
Yeah.
I will say this about Linda. Monica hates her. Monica's parents railed against her. Monica's attorney, railed against her. I will tell you this, and I've been told this by credible people who know a lot of things and know the Clintons, that Linda told Monica to save that blue dress. She said, don't you ever get rid of that blue dress. Because she wanted to throw it away, and when she was mad at him, and he broke up with her, and back and forth and back and forth. And she said, don't ever throw that dress away. And I am convinced that that dress saved Monica Lewinsky's life, because I think the plan for Monica was to disappear. I've been told that. And given the long list of people that we've seen who've met mysterious, deaths, who know the Clintons, it wouldn't surprise me. And I was told, I was told by somebody, a very well-known member of Congress, that when I went in after being deposed in the Paul Jones case, I had been harassed and threatened and intimidated and terrorized for months before that deposition, once my name first came out. And even after, when I became a cooperating witness with Ken Starr's investigation, it went on for over a year, and it was horrible. And they her hired goons, as I call them, and we have proof of it. They told their stories under oath in the Ken Starr investigation. I was threatened 2 days before that deposition, and I live in a very rural area. It's very hard to find me. My address isn't anywhere. My address wasn't in the phone book at the time. You had to work hard to find me, and people would. I live in the country. It's the country, and people would. It was the kind of place where the post office is supposed to open at 8, but they unlocked the doors at 6.
Well, let me ask you this.
At 6, and there was many a time
that Kathleen,
strangers would just walk into the post office, trying to get my location from the people who worked there. And I was new here, but and all of this started. I moved out here in April of '97, and my name came out the last day of July of '97. And they became very protective of me. I have to say, they really did. And anybody who walked in, they said, either get out or we're calling the police. We know why you're here, and you're not going to find out anything from us. So, I had a lot of people, strangers, that and that I didn't. I only found out later. I mean, I have my mailman. It came out. He showed up at my door one day on a Friday after all this started, because my mail. I was at the bottom of a long driveway, and then you go up to the top of it, and up there is where the mailbox is, and that's where the press would hang out. They try to get down here, but I had the presence of mind to have a very big 125-pound German Shepherd who never left my side. And, whenever anybody started walking down the driveway, I would just stand on the front porch with her and just say, I would advise you to back up slowly. And that kept them away. But still, they tried. And, I had a number of really terrifying things happen here during all of those months. But
let's get to that. Well, let me ask you a question first. A couple of questions.
Okay.
One is the name Anthony Pellicano, the private investigator. Did his name ever come up in your story?
Pellicano's name came up. Terry Lunson's name came up, and the main one was Palladino, Jack Palladino, and his wife.
Okay.
Their names came up.
But the reason why I asked about Pellicano in particular is because he's in prison right now. He had C4 explosives and had all kinds of illegal.
Oh yeah, the fish, the fish in the newspaper on a reporter's hood of a car or something.
Right.
And the bullet in the mailbox kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but what kind of?
He was a really bad guy.
Oh yeah. He everyone knows that.
So Palladino, so is he.
But he's still around, though. I don't want to get in trouble.
Oh yeah, he's still around.
No, but now my question is this though: what kind of what did you trace back to Pellicano doing to you?
Nothing to Pellicano.
Okay.
Nothing to Pellicano.
So now we kind of glossed over the incident in the Oval Office. So for the audience that's not familiar, just describe what was the impetus of all this that caused all these problems for you.
My husband was an attorney.
Okay.
And he came to me one day in November, and he said, I've gotten myself into trouble. And he kind of soft-pedaled it, but basically he'd embezzled some clients' money from his escrow account.
Right. It's very common.
Intention of paying it back, and I didn't know about it at the time. And I never knew about it. We had one of these very traditional Southern marriages, and he was 13 years older than I was, and it was like, you take care of the kids, I'll take care of them and the money kind of thing. I mean, that's the way it was back then.
Sure.
And so he had a good career, and he was very successful. He was a land use lawyer, and won a lot of cases. And I thought we were doing well, and I found out, unfortunately, it wasn't all that well. And
well, I just want to interject here. It's very, very common for attorneys to dip into the escrow account.
Yes.
And usually 99% of the time, they never get caught. But
well, especially lawyers who only work for themselves.
Right.
And they don't have to answer to a big law firm, where they keep better track of things.
Yeah, that's rampant.
Right, and I've seen that happen a lot in this town. And I have seen some of the lawyers who have done that, who have committed suicide also. You don't want to be there. And but anyway, he'd taken a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars that he won for clients, and he took it. And I don't know to this day what he did with it. I don't know if he was paying past due bills, or I don't know what he did with it. But they finally figured it out. I mean, he wouldn't return their phone calls, and they finally had one of these clandestine 6 a.m. meetings in the parking lot of the county courthouse, and they said, okay, we know what's going on, and you've got 2 weeks to pay us this money back, and here's a note that we want you to sign, and we want your wife to co-sign it also. And we need this note back by 1 o'clock this afternoon. So he called me that day, and I was out going to do Meals on Wheels, and I remember he called me and he said, I've got to see you right away. And I said, well, I'm not there expecting me at Meals on Wheels. And he said, well, you're just going to have to cancel it. And he met me at home, which was really strange. I mean, that never happened, even though his office was close to ours. And he walked in, and he started telling me the story, and he said, don't worry, everything's under control. I've made arrangements to borrow the money, and we're going to get out of this, but they need us by 1 o'clock today, or else I'm really going to be in trouble. They're going to go to the bar. And so I said, well, okay, well, of course I was going to. What was I going to do? Say no? And so, yeah, I signed it. And they had what they call a gentleman's agreement, which holds a lot of water here in the South. And anyway, they shook hands on it. And they said if he would have the money paid back by noon on November 29th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving, that all would be forgiven, and that would be the end of it. Well, they got the note. I signed the note, and they went straight to the bar. And the bar started investigating him. So at that point, he knew it didn't matter whether he paid him back or not. He was already in trouble and facing serious consequences.
But even still, what I've seen, Laura, is it just got a suspension after dipping into the escrows.
Who knows? That's the thing. That's when I get, you go through all the stages of grief. I mean,
yeah.
Look at it. It's 23 years later. He would have been in and out by
right.
now. Probably, I don't know if he would have lost his license forever, or what Bill Clinton lost it for 5 years. He got his license back. Not that he ever needed it again, but who knows? I mean, maybe some judge would have given him a harsher sentence because of who his father was, or maybe a lighter one because of who his father was, or he could have a plea. Who knows? He didn't want to. He couldn't face it.
Yeah.
He couldn't face the shame and embarrassment of it. And so anyway, my children, we were all home for Thanksgiving, and at that point, he sat down and we told them what was going on. Because I said, we're going to have to tell them, because things are going to have to change around here.
How old were the kids?
They were in college.
Right.
And my daughter was in Harvard, and my son was at the College of Charleston. And, he indulged them and gave them a lot of things that they wanted. We sat down and I said, things are going to have to change. I mean, we got some serious problems here. And I'm going to go to the White House first thing on Monday morning. I'm going to go see the president. He's a friend, and I'm just going to say, look, my volunteer days are over. I need a job, and in the meantime, you guys are going to have to. We're going to have to start thinking about maybe selling the house and and starting over again. And you're going to have to start working towards contribute towards your tuition and getting loans and grants and whatever it is people have to do. Things are going to change, and it was rather. The sad part was it got to be a rather contentious family meeting, and my children had that as a memory, as our last time together as a family, and there's a lot of anger and bitterness there. But long story short, I went to Washington the following Monday, and I called his assistant and I said, could I please see the president for a few minutes? I really have a problem and I really need to ask a big favor. And she said, stay by the phone, I'll fit you in, which they did. And I went to see him, and I walked in the Oval Office, sat down in front of his desk. I was very upset. I've been trying to call him all day. Nobody could find him. His office couldn't find him. Nobody could find him. And this was before the days of cell phones. He had a car phone, but nobody had cell phones. And I must have called him 50 times that day before I even walked into the Oval Office. And I was very upset. I was crying. I was very upset. And I told him, I said, my husband's in trouble, and I need a job. And, if you can, and at that point, he was my best shot at a job. I had been a stay-at-home mom. I hadn't finished college. We had it wasn't one of these, we raised a lot of money for you, so, it's time for you to help me. It wasn't like that. It was just.
Although it should be. You have every right to walk in there and demand after putting a guy in office, giving him a desk space.
No, it was never like that.
But it should have been.
I need your help.
Yeah.
That's all. I never mentioned, look what we did for you. But he knew what that. I was just saying, we were friends.
Yeah.
We were friends. I mean, I told my children, I told my husband, I'm going to go in and see the president on Monday and ask him for a job. Everybody knew it. And, so he could see that I was. And he said, well, would you like a cup of coffee? I can see you're upset. And I said, well, yeah, sure, I would. And he said, well, let's go back here in the back. I've got a little kitchenette here. And I noticed, it didn't, I was so upset, but I noticed him dismissing the guy that worked there in the back. And he said, well, let's go in here. I've got a private study here, and let's go in here and sit down, and we can talk more privately. And like I said, I never saw anything. I just didn't see anything wrong with that. And he went in, and he did sit down, and I never sat down. I just stood up and drinking my coffee and leaned up against the door jamb of the door. And and I just told him we made a little bit of small talk about how things were going in the social office at that time, which is where I was, and I just gave him the basics, and I said, I know that you're fitting me in. I've got a very short window here, but I just need to give you the basics, and I just need a job, and I'm not necessarily asking for a job here. I just need Richmond would be great, anywhere in the federal government if you could just help me. My life has changed dramatically. Our lives have. We've got 2 kids in college, and we've got a very serious situation.
Did you go into detail about the disbarment, about the escrows? Did you go into detail about the escrows?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I told him what had happened, and his being a lawyer, he knew what I was talking about, and anyway, so I just, I thanked him for his time, and I said, I appreciate you. I know you're busy, and all of the perfunctory thank yous and everything. And I was going to walk out, and next thing I knew, he had me backed into a corner, and I just remember thinking to myself, my first reaction was, what in the world is he doing? And it was very unexpected and inappropriate and under the circumstances, and hands all over me and whispered in my ear, and I just thought to myself, I don't know what to do here. I've talked to other women about this and who suffered at his hands, as well as other women who've been in these situations with their bosses, and you don't know what to do. You just don't know what to do. And I thought to myself, well, I guess I could slap him, but does that mean, next thing I know, I'm going to have the Secret Service coming in, hauling me off? And, I was just trying to get out of there. And what saved me was, because he did have an appointment waiting for him, his aide, Andrew Friendly, started banging on the door that led back into that area and saying, Mr. President, we've got an appointment, they're waiting for you. And I thought, oh, thank God, that's going to at least distract him. Not in the slightest that it distracted him. And so I'm trying to gracefully get out of this situation, and it seemed like forever, but it wasn't. But Andrew banged on the door again, and it was that was my moment, and that's when I got out of there. It distracted him enough that I got out of there. And he's much bigger than I am. I'm little. I'm about 5'2", and he's 6'2" or something. And it took some doing, but I got out of there, and I just remember thinking I just remember thinking I just got to get myself straight here, and just hold my head up and thinking to myself, who in God's name is going to be waiting on the other side of the door for this appointment? And sure enough, I opened the door, and there stands Leon Panetta and Lloyd Benson. And I'm thinking to myself, dear God, with the rumors going around with him, what in the world are they thinking? And I just got out of there as fast as I could. And, by that time, it was time for me to kind of start packing up and getting out of there and getting to the train. And the minute I did, I just, raced to his office, knowing in my heart that he was there. And he wasn't. I pulled into the office, and the lights were off, and the door was locked, and my heart just sank. And I thought, well, he's got to be at home. And so I raced home, which was about 10 or 15 minutes there, and wasn't there. And I spent half the night driving around, looking for him, his old haunts, or friends' homes, or anywhere. And I never found him. And I finally came home in the middle of the night.
This is your husband you're looking for. That you're describing that you're looking for your husband.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was looking for my husband because nobody heard it for the entire day. Nobody heard none of it. Not his office, me, nobody. And it was the next day that I got a phone call from the sheriff in a county that was 60 miles away that had it had no meaning to me or us or him. Well, not me, him, but not us as a family. And he just driven deep into this very rural county and pulled off into a hunting road and walked into the woods and sat down on a tree stump and by a marsh and killed himself. I mean, I eventually found the nerve, the state policeman who was put in charge of the whole case. So I wanted to see where it happened, and he took me out there, and so I could see it. And anyway, that's what happened.
Did he leave a note?
It was just horrible.
Did your husband leave a note?
He left us notes. Mine was the one he left me was very legal. It was very legal, and basically said I was a fool out of control, and he never really said I don't think he told any of us he was sorry. But he said it was just heartbreaking. He told my kids, you'll do well, and he told my son to take care of your mother and your sister, and it was horrible. He left. He didn't leave any for his mother or his sister. He left one for his best friend, two of his best friends. And one of them, in fact, was the one who would offer to loan him the money to pay off his debt. And after that, and then 2 days after his funeral, I got slapped with a lawsuit for over $500,000 by a slimy, guy. What do they call him? A processor.
Oh, processor. Yeah.
Yeah, came by the house. When none of us had come up from air. I have a vague recollection of him slapping that thing in my hand, and just remember opening it up and looking at it and just thinking, dear God, I mean, we were a mess. We were just a mess. My son couldn't go back to school. My daughter did go back to school, and it was just it was a horrible, horrible, horrible time that we had to get through. I had numerous lawsuits that I had to get through, and it hasn't been easy since then. It hasn't. I never was able to get meaningful work. There was some insurance money that I was able to live off of for a while, and then by the time when that ran out, the whole scandal had already happened, and try sitting down and sitting across from an employer or somebody being interviewed for a job, being Kathleen Willey, and sitting there and thinking to myself, well, should I tell them who I am? Because it was some years, it was 3 or 4 years later. I mean, that happened in 1993 in the Oval Office, and when my husband died, and it was after 1997 when my name came out, and then it was really big. My name was in 98, and that's when I really needed a job. And
how did your name come out?
I never could find meaningful work. I just couldn't find a job. I mean, it's just been horrible.
How did your name come out?
How what?
How did your name come out? How did this whole incident in the White House, how did it all become public?
Linda told Paula Jones's attorneys, and they deposed me. And I had to go into federal court.
Okay.
And tell the story. And, like I said, 2 days before that, her hired goons showed up here at where I lived, they'd been watching me, I realized. I used to walk in the mornings very early. And this stranger just approached me, and it basically asked me how my kids were, and he knew their names and their addresses and the towns that they lived in. And he asked me if I had ever found. My cat had gone missing when I first moved out here, and he was old. I mean, he never left the house, and I had put signs up and pictures of him, and I thought this guy was a neighbor. I hadn't met all the neighbors out here. And like I said, I don't live in a subdivision with sidewalks. We're all spread apart out here in the woods. And it was just, and I walked, and he appeared to be a jogger, and he stopped me. And that's when he started asking me about my kids, and he threatened them. He threatened their lives. And then the two small children of my best friend, same thing. And I was terrified at that point. I thought, well, I think I'm going to be dying right here, and nobody's going to find my body for another hour or so when people start driving out here to go to work. And I had my dogs with me, and basically, he finally just looked at me and said, "You're just not getting the message, are you?" And this was after all of these horrible things, these weird things that happened around here. My cat disappeared. Another one, I came home and found a perfectly healthy 1-year-old cat dead outside of my deck. And my dad had no access to the yard. The only way to get into that deck was through my house. Somebody came in the house and stole the transcript of my book in the middle of the night one night while I was asleep upstairs. I found somebody roaming around, the back of my house at 3 o'clock in the morning. My tires were slashed. My German Shepherd, who never left my side, completely disappeared in the thin air for 3 days. I mean, it just was strange phone calls. The only phone call that I got, and you being a private investigator, you will understand this better than anybody, because this is a big no in your profession. A private investigator who was hired to come down here. You know what a noisy investigation is.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he was hired to do. And he was so troubled. To this day, we're friends now. He was so troubled by what he was told to do, what his instructions were, and he asked before his boss gave him instructions, he said, "May I ask where these instructions are coming from? Who hired you?" And he said, "The Oval Office."
Really?
And this guy did what no private investigator does. He called me up, and I wasn't here, and he left a message on my answer machine. He left a fictitious name, and he said, "My name is Kirk, and you need to understand that there are bad people who are out to get you, to cause you harm, and you need to be careful, and I will call you back tomorrow and tell you more." Well, I immediately called the FBI, because at that point, I was a cooperating witness, and at that point, I called the FBI immediately, and they set up a trap, and he never called back. But interestingly enough, he came forward, and voluntarily, and he testified in the grand jury under oath about what he'd been hired to do. So there's plenty of proof.
Yeah.
Of Hillary's hands in these reigns of terrors. And believe me, I've talked to many women who have suffered the same thing.
Well, no, this story is very similar to the other stories as well. But now let me ask you a question. Now, you said 2 days before you were going to go testify at the Paula Jones lawsuit that this guy came around and started threatening you. Did you make a police report about that?
No. I was scared. No.
Okay.
I was too scared, not to malign my sheriff's department, but it's just a very small operation, and the guy was gone. And
right.
He was just gone. I just remember just running away from him, and him. About 100 yards away, that I was running away from him. I turned around to see if he was running after me, and basically he was gone. He just disappeared. I never saw him again. So I just came home, and I just said, I remember just sitting here. It was a January morning, January 8th of 1998, and I just remember sitting here thinking, boy, I am way out of my league here.
And you were living...
And I will be the first one, I will tell you, and I'll be the very first one to admit that I had every intention of going into that courtroom and lying under oath. I was that terrified. I was terrified. When somebody threatens your children, you're talking a whole different ball game here. And I was fully, but I just thought I'm just gonna have to do this and just take my chances. And some inner voice kicked in after being married to a lawyer for 23 years. I knew how to dance around questions in a deposition, and I danced the dance for as long as I could. And finally, the judge just said, "You're going to have to start answering some questions here, Mrs. Willey." We had, and the president's attorney was there, Bob Bennett, and I told the truth, and I just kicked in, and I'll never forget the look on Bob Bennett's face. His mouth, his jaw dropped open, because once my name came out, he all of a sudden became our new best friend. Remember, I was one of those, loyal, faithful Democrats, and he all of a sudden, Big Bob Bennett is driving down to Richmond practically every week, saying, "You've got the full services of our law firm, and we've got to do everything to keep Kathleen out of this." But every time he showed up, he wanted to. He kept praying and praying. What happened? Well, it's just a boorish past, right? And I never told him. And I just said it was unexpected and unwelcome. And so when he sat there, and I told the judge the story, I have to say his cross-examination was pretty weak. He was having a hard time finding words. But I was told later, and like I said, I don't want to get into these conspiracy theories, but I had an attorney, in Washington on the Hill who asked me about this when I became part of the SAR investigation, and asked me why I'd gone in to tell the truth, because he wanted to see me and talk to me about a lot of things, and I said, I don't know, something just told me to do it. He said, well, let me tell you something. That was your life insurance policy. Because had you gone in and lied, you would have disappeared too. And that got my attention.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. Now, you keep describing that you were living in the woods. Now, you were living in that house all by yourself? Okay. Now, did you ever think, say, well, I better get out of here and get around people and move into some place where there's more safety? Or you just weren't able to?
I mean, well, I lived here. Where was I going to go? I'm going to sell my house and move somewhere else?
Now, what about...
it just wasn't something...
Kathleen...
For a very long time...
Yeah.
For a very long time, I thought my imagination was getting the best of me.
Right.
You were kind of these things of like, did this really happen? Or is this... Well, I would get on phone calls, like... I got a phone call one day, and I remember, it said, was this Kathleen Willey? Well, this is a power company, and we're getting ready to do some work out there. And it was a hot summer day, and, we just want to make sure that you don't have any elderly people or small babies in your home. And I said, no, it's just me. And I got the phone, and I thought, that's weird, because the power never went off. And I called my lawyer right away, and I said, do you think this is weird? And he said we had just gotten caller ID was a new thing then,
right?
And we're relatively new. And he said, you got the number? And I said, he said, start calling that number now, and I'll do the same thing. And it just rang and rang and rang. But I got that later. One of those investigators, they were trying. That's when they were starting to track me down and find me. And so it was those kind of things.
And you said that they broke into your house and they stole the manuscript for the book.
I don't know why they didn't take my computer, but that was all they took.
They could have made a copy of the computer. Could have made a copy of the hard drive while they were there.
I had the hard copy.
No, but I mean, they could have made a copy of your hard drive. They could have.
I know. I don't know. I don't know if they did. I don't know. All I know is the next day, because I was editing it, and then I had the hard copy, a big stack of paper of my book. I was doing it for my editor, and it wasn't there. And I'm thinking, well, I must have misplaced it. I must have been upstairs, and I started looking all over the house for it, and that's when I realized it was just not there.
Now,
it wasn't there.
Around this time when you're being threatened, you're being intimidated, you're being surveilled, did anybody ever approach you and say, hey, listen, how would you like to go live in Aruba? We got a place for you in Aruba.
No.
You can go live there for free, and we'll set you up. They never offered you money.
No, I just thought that was odd.
What was
I
that?
just thought that was kind of odd. I thought,
Yeah.
I wondered at some point when somebody's going to try to bribe me. And nobody ever did. Because I know a lot of others. I've known other people that were given that opportunity. But nobody, they, you know, her idea was just to terrorize me.
Right. Now, do you think that might have been...
To do the best she could. And, you know, and that's when the mainstream press was playing their game and defending them to the end of the earth. And you know, all of us women were just vilified.
Do you think that the part of the motivation for that could have been jealousy, that maybe Hillary saw, hey, Bill has an eye for this woman, and her anger and her jealousy was part of the motivation?
No.
No? Okay.
I don't think they had a marriage. I think it had everything to do with power and their plan. It had nothing to do with jealousy. Now, I think at first, maybe, when they were first married, because, I mean, look, she knew what he was like before they got married. I mean, she sent her, before she moved to Arkansas and they were engaged, she was still working in Chicago. And she sent her father and her brother down on weekends to keep an eye on him. She knew what he was all about. And, I mean, there have been, allegedly, he raped a woman and when he was in law school, and that's when they met. He raped a woman at Oxford. I've gotten a number of emails from women through my website. I've put a place on my website for women who suffered anything at his hands. Please contact me if they could find the courage to do so. And I offered them, I said, you know, if you want to remain anonymous, I promise you that, you know, you will remain anonymous. And but if you decide to go public, that, you know, there'll be a lot of us who will stand with you and be with you. And I've heard from a number of women, but to this day, two of them have given me their permission to tell their story without any identifying information. That's the best I've gotten out of them. The rest of them just want. I just have told them. I've written on my website. I've said it on TV. I've said it in radio interviews that, you know, if you just want to get it off your back, and you need to tell somebody about it. Here's your time. Here's your opportunity to do it. You're talking to somebody who's been there. And I've heard from a number of women, and like I said, so far, they've all checked out. I've vetted every one of them.
Now, you said also, too, that you knew of other women that were paid off.
That were what?
That were paid. I asked you before, did anybody ever offer you money? And you said no.
Do I know of any? No. I don't know of any other women who were paid off.
No.
I just know of other women who were either assaulted or raped by him. Okay.
And what about these rumors you hear about drug smuggling down in Mena Airport in Arkansas and stuff like that?
No, I've never. I got one email from a woman who claimed to have been a witness to some of that. But that's one part of the whole story that I've never gotten into.
Okay.
The whole Mena thing, at the airport thing, and the drug smuggling and all that stuff. I have not gotten into that. The only part I've gotten into started with when, Hillary is the one who came up with the word the bimbo eruptions. You know, everybody was so outraged when Trump called Megyn Kelly a bimbo. You know, and Hillary just made a huge deal of that, and I thought to myself, well, gee, you know, I've been called a bimbo for 18, 19 years now, and I don't even hear the word anymore. I mean, really, what's word? It's not a very nice word, and Donald Trump should not have called Megyn Kelly that, although I think that she acted very, I think her questions were, she was armed for bear. I mean, you know, she was looking for trouble, but, you know, she's a big girl. She knew what she was getting into, and she got an awful lot of press out of it. Look where she is today. But look, I was called a bimbo 19 years ago by a woman who wants to now be president. Which is worse?
Now, when you came forward and you testified, did you have anything to gain by testifying in your life? Any kind of benefit, any possible benefit from that?
I had to testify. I was forced to.
Right, I understand. But then what is people's allegation against you? That you made it up because, for what reason? What reason would you have to make up this story? Any possible... You know what I'm saying?
Who would make up a story like this?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's you had nothing to gain by coming forward, and your life's been turned upside down. You would say.
Right. Well, I I didn't know my life was going to be turned upside down the same day that I went in to ask the president.
Right. No, not by that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea that the next day I was going to be without a husband.
Right.
None. I saw no sign of that whatsoever. I never picked up on one single sign that he had that plan. And then, and once I came up for air, and I had to start dealing with all of the lawsuits and all, I started tracking him that day and days before that, and tried to find every single person that he had been around or talked to or spent time with. In a courtroom or outside of a courtroom, or friends, or his secretaries, and anybody and everybody. And every single person that I talked to who had been with him just only a few hours before he killed himself, said he acted absolutely normal. The only thing, the last person who saw him said he had a cold. He sounded like he was all congested and had a cold. And I don't remember that morning. Not that has any meaning whatsoever at all.
It could have been crying.
That was the only thing that I heard.
Could have been crying, and that'll make you stuffed up.
It could have been. That's a good point, That's a good point. I never thought of that.
I'm sure. You cry so hard, yeah. Then you always get so stuffed up, and your eyes look red, yeah.
I know.
Oh, boy. I'm so sorry about that. I'm so sorry. You've been through a lot here. Now, have you ever had face-to-face with Hillary or Bill after that incident in the Oval Office that day?
Oh, yeah. I saw her. I never saw her. I only saw him. And she just was never around, even though I would see her. Her office, as it turned out, when I was in the council's office in the West Wing, her office was next to ours. And every day she got off the elevator, which was right at our door, there wasn't a door there, which is a door opening. I would see her get off the elevator, heading to her office. But she never looked in the door or said hello or anything. She just headed straight for her office. And I didn't see her until to actually see her face to face after that incident at a World Summit. And this after I left the White House. I was given a job, but it only lasted a year and a half, if that long. But anyway, I still needed a job after I left, and I let the president know. I still need a job.
Right.
I wish I could stay here, but what happened was they brought in another counsel, and he wanted to bring in his staff, and so that was the end of that. And I think at that point, too, I was a bad reminder, and he had every intention, although he promised me that he would do everything that he could for me. He just wanted me out of there. And I had one thing that was really a really dirty trick. I was told go and see the head of his 96 campaign, and 96. To work to get this, they would offer me a job on the campaign.
Yeah.
And they did. I went to see the finance chair in Washington at the campaign. It's DNC actually, was where, before they even really set up their headquarters. And I was given a job. I was given a job description. I was given a salary. I was told what it was going to be. and it was basically kind of work as an advanced person for fundraising events all over the country. And I made arrangements to rent an apartment in Washington because I knew I was going to spend a lot of time up there. And I made arrangements to get a house sitter, and because I had pets. You know, I've always had dogs and cats who would take care of my pets for that whole time. And, you know, all set to go, and here's your start date. And as the date got closer, I started calling just to make sure everything was on schedule. I must have called that office, and I must have called that man 100 times, and they never called me back. It was all a ruse.
And what do you think the motivation for that was?
Well, you think they tried to keep. You think they try to do. You would think they wouldn't try to do something that would be kind of a dirty trick, now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah.
You would think so. You tell me, because I've never been able to figure it out. But I never ever heard another word from him. Nothing. And all those arrangements I had to make, I had to cancel them all of them.
And did anybody ever give you an explanation of why no one was contacting, no one was getting back to you, or?
If they'll never get back in touch with you,
Yeah.
how are you going to find somebody, you know, unless you just walk in and say, what's going on?
Right.
And at that point, after 100 phone calls, I wasn't going to lower myself to that.
Right.
I wasn't. I just thought, you know, give it up. Just move on.
Let me ask you a question. Now, in the news recently, there's all these reports about Bill Clinton flying on this plane with Jeffrey Epstein, who's a convicted pedophile, convicted sex offender. And Bill Clinton, according to flight records, has been on this plane 26 times. Mm-hmm. And I believe 6 of those times...
Nice, huh?
Yeah, I know, yeah. And 6 of those times, he ditched the Secret Service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you make of that?
Oh, what I make of that is that he's a scumbag. That's what I make of it. This man is hanging around with a convicted pedophile, flying around on the Lolita Express, going to Orgy Island, being serviced by underage girls. Now, we got 2 words for that: human trafficking and pedophilia.
Yeah.
Did you see George Bush doing that?
Well,
Richard Nixon? Or George Bush Sr.? Jimmy Carter? And what's the matter with her that she says, she doesn't say, that's probably not a very good idea. And the fact is that from all reports that I hear is that they are rarely under the same roof. And when they are, it's not pleasant. And she rarely knows where he is.
Right.
They do talk on the phone, but she never asks him where he is unless she needs him. And he started campaigning for him. And you notice he kind of disappeared on that because he was screwing up so badly.
Yeah, he seems so old and feeble now.
He is old.
Yeah.
Caught up with him. It's called karma.
Yeah. What about the rumors that he may have AIDS? What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
He doesn't look good. And remember, you probably they would release his medical records the whole time he was running or after he got into the White House.
Oh, really?
Ever.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Positively, his medical records were never released.
Why do you think that is? Do you have any ideas?
Well, yeah, called STDs.
All right, okay. Now, let me ask you this.
Right.
All your dealings with these characters, right? Oh, by the way, what do you make of Ken Starr being on the defense team, being on Jeffrey Epstein's defense team?
Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Well, You know, I had heard rumors about that, but I never really followed up on it.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of work on the Epstein case. I'm very familiar with that story. We've done a lot of reports on that.
Have you really?
Oh, yeah. Okay, now...
I mean, how do people... The thing is, I don't understand, because I was talking to somebody about that last week. I'm trying to remember who it was, and somebody had a big dinner party for him and somewhere, and Kate, all kinds of well-known people.
Katie Couric, yeah.
And, I mean, who would want to hang out with a dirtbag like that?
Well,
it's called, I guess, people that just have no soul and no conscience. They just, no big deal.
Yeah, if you look at the flight logs, Courtney Love is on there, Chris Tucker, the president of Israel.
I mean, I just can't.
Amazing.
I just can't imagine. Maybe I mean, I was probably raised by nuns. I mean, it's just beyond me.
Well, I tell you too.
I mean, a former president hanging around with this. I mean, you know exactly what's going on.
Well, if you read the probable cause affidavit, which is available online, when you walk into his mansion in Palm Beach, there's nude photographs of underage girls on the walls in frames all over the home. So,
you gotta be kidding.
No, you can read it yourself. It's there. It's outrageous. It really is outrageous.
Well, you gotta know that if you're involved in this case, then you gotta know that there's a Russian girl.
Yeah.
Who is suing him? Well, and you know who her lawyer is? It's David Boyce.
I'm not familiar with the name David Boyce.
David Boyce was the attorney who was brought in for the recount.
Oh, okay.
With Gore and Bush.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, we got to take a look at that.
I mean, this is one of these high-level, supposedly high-integrity kind of guys.
Yeah.
And he's representing this Russian girl who's going after Clinton and Epstein. Well, let's say I don't think she's going after Clinton, but Clinton's name is certainly going to be brought into it.
Now, I can't imagine how it can't be,
I can't either.
Now, with all too, dealing with all you dealt with some of the biggest people in politics, what do you think of this email scandal? You think there'll be an indictment, or you think she's going to totally walk on this?
I don't know James Comey, but I know of him,
okay.
and the reason is because he was a federal attorney here in Richmond, and I noticed him a long time ago when he worked for the federal government here, and we had a big drug and murder problem in this city, and he really kind of cleaned this place up. And I just remember him and his integrity and and his reputation and I just paid close attention to him because of the good things that he was doing, and he is a man of high integrity, high moral standards. He expects nothing but the same from his agents. He's very proud and protective of them. I can't imagine that he's not going to send a referral over to Lynch. If she doesn't indict, I think you're going to see a riot at the FBI, and he's going to resign. I cannot. He is not the kind of guy that Barack Obama is going to tell what to do. It's as simple as that.
And he has previous dealings with the Clintons, too, right, where he claimed that they weren't forthcoming with evidence. They were trying to hide stuff.
He has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He knows. I mean, he had a role in Whitewater.
Okay. Yeah, right. It was Whitewater.
He knows exactly what they are and what they're up to, and what they've gotten away with. And, I think he's got just a little bit of a personal vendetta going there, which wouldn't bother me in the slightest.
I wish. We got to see some justice in all this. When I
it's got to be.
There's got to be.
Agree. There's just got to be. I just can't imagine people voting for this woman for president. I can't imagine any woman who would vote for this. Any person. I'm sorry. I can't imagine anybody voting for this woman. And those who do, and like I said, those people that you can't reason with whatsoever, they just are going to vote for her. That's all. It's just that simple. You can't talk to them. You can't reason with them. But I think this whole thing in Orlando, I think it has changed the whole picture dramatically.
How so?
I think, well, I don't know if you saw the president's press conference today after meeting with the Security Council. It was a joke. It was insulting. I think because she's following the party line, she's lost the gay vote, as well she should. I mean, she's taken. We haven't even gotten into. You and I have not even gotten into the 15-month investigation by Charles Ortel. I think you've spoken with him.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's a great guy. Yeah.
Well, what a lot of people don't know is I've been working with Charles for 16 months on that.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
Charles Ortel is the guy who's investigating the Clinton Foundation for, and a lot of people.
He's a brilliant New York financial analyst.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
He's the real deal. He's apolitical. He doesn't, he's brilliant. He retired when he was 42. He was a single father. He's not looking for money. He's not looking for a book deal. He's doing this for one reason. He's done this deep dive. I mean, he has found $100 billion plus worth of fraud in the Clinton Foundation. And people are starting to pay attention. It's taken a while, but people have started to pay attention. And Jake Tapper has interviewed him, and it's going to get to the point where mainstream media is not going to be able to ignore it anymore. And I think, she's taking money from all of these countries where women are treated like dogs, and gay people, men, are blindfolded and thrown off the tops of buildings. And she's taking money from these people. I mean, she's talking out of both sides of her mouth. I mean, she's the biggest hypocrite I've ever met in my entire life. And people are going to see through that. I mean, there's a story out today. I just put it on my website. I mean, 20% of her campaign is being funded by Saudi Arabia. Well, you know what that is? Illegal.
We just had we had Alice Backer on the show as well, and she's done this investigation of the Clintons' activity in Haiti, and they have robbed that country. They've robbed the country blind.
We could spend another 2 hours on this. I mean, you've had Charles on the show. Haven't you had Charles on the show?
Yeah.
I mean, they put Clinton, the head of the Haiti fund, which was never registered as a charity. And they bring in $14 billion worth of donations, and $13 billion has gone missing. And the country, they're still living in squalor. And Tony Rodham made millions of dollars in a deal over there for doing nothing.
That's Clinton's brother. Got a gold mine.
Yeah, and now they're dealing with cholera. And wait till you hear. I mean, I just can tell you briefly, and it'll all come out. Clinton teamed up with one of the biggest fraudsters in India, and he got caught. He just went to jail and has just gotten out. And they bribed one of the pharmaceutical companies over there called Ranbaxy, and they, honest to God, they go around, the Clintons and Chelsea go around talking about all their good works of what they're doing for HIV/AIDS in Africa. They bribed this pharmaceutical company. They're sending adulterated, watered-down drugs to these poor people in Africa who have HIV/AIDS, and they think they're going to get better, and they're dying.
Yeah, Mr. Ortel told us all about that. Yeah.
Yeah. These are the stories that need to get out.
Yeah, I know, but they don't.
And if you notice, I mean, the story of Charles' investigation is starting to get legs here, as they say in the business. And you have not heard one response from the Clinton Foundation. Although I will tell you that the producer said to him, when Jake Tapper's producer, said to him before the interview, said that they had called the Clinton Foundation and they wanted his response because the Clinton Foundation said that they had talked with Mr. Ortel and answered all of his questions to his satisfaction, and what was his response to that? And he said, that's a complete lie. He said, I've never talked to anybody at the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, they said they would cooperate with
investigations like this. I mean, he took on GE and found they eventually got fined $900 billion for the fraud that they had committed. And when he gets into these things, he never contacts his targets. Why would he do that? He's never gone anywhere near them. He's never picked up he never tried to contact them whatsoever. And they told Jake Tapper's producer that they had answered all of his questions to his satisfaction. I happened to be in Washington on other business when he was up there too, and I was supposed to go over to that interview with him, but I couldn't at the last minute. I had to go home, and but he said, you should have seen the look on that producer's face when I said, no, I never talked to those people.
Kathleen, are you aware of the Richard Bay show, kind of like almost like a Jerry Springer type show that was in New York City back in the 90s?
No.
Richard Bay, it was a very popular show. It was a very high-rated show. And he had Jennifer Flowers on his show as a guest. Mm-hmm. And the show was canceled the next day. And Richard Bay, to this day, claims it was due to the Clintons' pressure on the station.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Wouldn't surprise me either. Mm-mm. So you never heard anything about that, huh?
No.
Okay.
Never heard of the show.
It was a fun show. It was a silly little show. But he did this one serious. He did a couple little serious topics, and this was one of them. Let me ask you a question. Now, is there anything I've forgotten to ask you that you really think is important that people should know about?
The important thing is that the mainstream media, and I'll say this as quickly as I can, because afterwards I wrote a letter to Chris Cuomo, an open letter to Chris Cuomo. About 2 weeks ago, or shortly after Trump had pretty much gotten the nomination, secured the nomination, Chris Cuomo had him on his show on a Monday morning. And he went through the perfunctory thanks for being on the show, and he started right in. Let me ask you this, Mr. Trump. With everything else that's going on in the world with terrorism and the economy and jobs and this and that, why do you choose to attack Hillary Clinton for her husband's infidelities? And typical Bill, Donald Trump said, "Well, isn't this a nice way to start an interview?" And and they really kind of got into it, and after that, I thought to because this is, I keep hearing, I've even heard this from people like Kirk on Fox. Why would he why does he want to bring up all of that old history about his infidelities? And that's when I wrote this article, and it's on my website, and it's an open letter to Chris Paul. This is no longer about infidelities, indiscretions, sex, girlfriends, adultery. It's not about that anymore. It's not about the details of what happened to all of us women, all of that. Everybody's heard those details. It's not about that anymore. It's about what this woman has done, this woman's advocate, okay, this advocate for children, who's sending adulterated, watered-down drugs to children who have HIV/AIDS in Africa, about what one woman will do for power. That's what this is about. And that's why I'm back out here, and that's why Juanita's back out here again, and that's why Paula Jones is back out here again, and there's other women that are considering going public again that I continue to talk to, and that's what this is about. That's what this is about. It's not about his infidelities. Who cares about what happened in their marriage, okay? We're talking about a mother. And I'll end it with this. What kind of a mother, who's now a grandmother, threatens the lives of another woman's children for power? And that's exactly what she did to me. And that's when Mama Bear went in and just, decided, I think I better be telling the truth here.
Kathleen Willey, thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
No, thank you so much. Not just for the show. Thank you for the show, but thank you for coming back. And educating people and enlightening people on what's really going on behind the scenes here. I really, really appreciate that.
Well, I'll certainly, if you can send me the tape, I'll put it on my website. And I've told everybody, I've gotten a lot of followers, and I hope to get more. And just spread the word. That's
Okay,
all.
this show will air live Friday night, and I'll get you a copy Friday night right after it airs.
That would be terrific.
No, listen, thank you so much.
I would be most appreciative if you could do that, and I'll put it on my website. I've got a lot of followers, and they get the word out. Anything that I ask to say, especially, spread the word on this or that, and they do that, and that's how we're going to win this.
Okay, great.
We've got to win this election.
Hey, real quick, what do you think of Bernie Sanders?
Predators back into the White House.
What do you think about what happened to Bernie Sanders? You think the election was totally stolen? The primary was stolen from Bernie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty obvious, huh?
Yeah. And I think that she's going to do, if she gets that far.
Yeah.
Although, I'll tell you what, even if she gets indicted, I think probably Lynch might get a special prosecutor, that's nothing but a delaying tactic, and that's a kiss of death in my book. If you get a special, look what they did to poor Ken Starr,
right?
And they ruined that man. And he had been on the short list for a number of nominations for the Supreme Court. He has a stellar reputation, and even if she gets indicted, she won't quit the race. And the only way that she will quit the race is if the Democrats come and say, you're out of here. And that may be the plan. I still have every reason to believe that Joe Biden is in the wings.
Yeah.
And I still have 100% faith in James Comey. And I always will.
Okay.
I really do. He's just kind of man who should be in that job, and Barack Obama is probably thinking, what in the world was I thinking when I made this guy the head of the FBI? Because he is a real man of honor, and I believe in him. That's what I'm holding on to.
Okay, so Kathleen Willey, your website is ascandaladay.com, and the book is Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton. And we'll have a link to that book up on the OppermanReport.com.
Okay, great.
Kathleen, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Oh, yeah.
I really did.
Well, good. Hey,
All right.
Anytime you have something to say, call me up. I'll put you right on.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. You have a good day, okay?
Okay, bye.
All right.
Okay, there you had Kathleen Willey. I think it went pretty good. What do you think, guys? I think that went pretty darn good. Pretty good. Okay. We didn't really get a press release we can put out on that, but otherwise, I'm very proud of that show. Got to let the guests talk, and they tend to say things. Okay, we'll be right back after these messages. This is your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. And if you're enjoying this show right now, there's more. You can get more. You can go to the Ed Opperman YouTube channel, and you could subscribe there. And we have archives of all of our past shows for over the past 3 years, about 200, 300 shows. You can also go to the Opperman Report Spreaker channel, and you could follow us there. Again, a ton of shows, about 300 shows on there. And whenever we do an impromptu show, an emergency type broadcast that we do during the week occasionally, you'll get an email notifying you of breaking news and spontaneous broadcasts that we may do during the week. You can also go to OppermanReport.com and become a member. If you become a member, you help support the free archives on Spreaker and YouTube, and you help support the free shows on Friday evening and on Saturday evening. Each of these shows, Friday evening and Saturday evening, are carried for free on 7 internet stations, okay? So you help support that, but also, too, at OppermanReport.com in the members section, we have exclusive content. shows that are recorded during the week that are only available to members. So please check out OppermanReport.com and help support the show.
The son of a Polish immigrant who grew up in a Brooklyn tenement, Bernie Sanders. He went to public schools, then college, where the work of his life began, fighting injustice and inequality, speaking truth to power. Bernie moved to Vermont, won election and praise as one of America's best mayors. In Congress, Bernie stood up for working families and for principle, opposing the Iraq War, supporting veterans. Now he's taking on Wall Street and a corrupt political system that holds up a rigged economy. Bernie's campaign is funded by over 1 million small contributions from people like you. He's fighting for living wages, equal pay, and tuition-free public colleges. Bernie Sanders.
People are sick and tired of establishment politics, and they want real change.
Bernie Sanders. Husband, father, grandfather. An honest leader. Building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
Check out strawmanmusic.com. Sean Duff is our webmaster here at the Opperman Report, and he's a very talented musician. He's part of a band called Strawman. They're based up there in Canada. Don't hold that against them. These are like-minded folks. If you like the shows you hear on the Opperman Report, you'll like the music that they have over at strawmanmusic.com.
Enough is enough. Wall Street's greed and illegal behavior drove this country into the worst economic downturn since the 1930s. And then, after getting a huge taxpayer bailout because they were too big to fail, it turns out that 3 out of the 4 largest banks are bigger today than they were before we bailed them out. That's crazy. I'm Bernie Sanders. My plan: break up the big banks who are strangling our economy and make them pay their fair share of taxes. Then we can invest in the middle class, expand Social Security, and provide universal college education. I'll rein in Wall Street behavior so they can't crash our economy again. Will they like me? No. Will they begin to play by the rules if I'm president? You better believe it. I'm Bernie Sanders, Democratic candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
You know, you can get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, if you go to my website, emailrevealer.com. Now, this is a limited edition book, okay? And you can get a signed copy of this book, and it'll be personally autographed to you or whoever you want to give the book to as a gift. Once you have my signature on that book, you can copy the signature and put it on checks and pass them all over the world. Emailrevealer.com. Get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator.
He's fought injustice and inequality his whole life. Bernie Sanders. As a college student, he was arrested for challenging segregated housing. Bernie marched with Dr. King and thousands of others for civil rights. In Congress, Bernie stood up for working families on health care and jobs. Now he's taking on Wall Street banks and a corrupt political system that keeps in place a rigged economy. Bernie Sanders, a reformer who believes in ending racial profiling and mass incarceration so the justice system works for everyone. Bernie Sanders.
There is no president who will fight harder to end institutional racism and reform our broken criminal justice system.
Bernie Sanders, an honest leader building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Bernie 2016.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Oh, boy. Hey, I tried doing that without the headphones on. I can't do it. Sounds too weird. I want to thank Kathleen Willey. Her website is scandaladay.com, and also the book is Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton. I really enjoyed that interview. I'm really proud of that interview. Sometimes you just got to let people talk. She's only supposed to do an hour, and I just let her go. You know, I didn't even tell her the commercials. If you notice, I didn't even play the commercials during the show. Okay, real quick, we need your support. You go to OppermanReport.com, become a member. $6, guys. It'll get me through this month. You know, we have had a lot of expenses this month, and I got a lot of stuff coming up, too. The whole trip to California with Hank and covering Bernie rallies. I'm going to be covering our Trump rally coming up on Saturday. I think it's on Saturday. And it seems like I'm getting my credentials back with the Trump campaign. Good news. On Saturday, we're doing a show about John Walsh and Adam Walsh and a theory that perhaps Jeffrey Dahmer was involved in the murder. Very interesting. A bunch of witnesses. So we'll see what we come up with that. At the end of this 2 hours here, don't forget to reboot. I'll be doing a live portion of the show. I don't know what I'm going to be talking about yet because today's only Monday, but I'm sure something will come up between now and then. OppermanReport.com. Become a member. You get exclusive content. If you want to advertise on the show, contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. If you want to make a donation, if you enjoyed the show tonight, if you enjoy the stuff we're putting out there, the work we're doing, PayPal, oppermanreport@gmail.com. Thank you all so much. Don't forget to reboot for the 1 hour after show.